And we also understood that each plot of land belongs to a village, to a community. We cannot say that the land belongs to the state and decide without the population. So we created communities in the rural areas where the chiefs of the communities are actually part of that, even the young, the people, the women, and all of that basically make the decision. The rural agent actually is there just to observe, because we understood that we cannot have a decision if the base has not validated that. So the two elements for governance in our country is the committee for the land regime, and we have this in every village, and there is no pressure. We actually train them, we just tell them what the law is, and we explain them that it's not only a question of land, but it is also a question to save the country from an imminent danger. And so what we realize is that there is an understanding from the population, and that also gives credibility to the administration. The administration is listened to because we didn't create a parallel administration. Everything that we organized was actually done with the administration, with the sub-prefects and the prefects, but they know that the decision comes from the base, comes from the population. So after that level, the administration controls, supervises to make sure that the land is not going to actually step into a protected area or a road or a piece of land that is already that already has a title. And in this administration, in which the village committee also sits, that's where the work is done. And we've organized a decentralization, so there would be a very close proximity to the villagers. So in all of the sub-prefectures, in particular in the areas that are covered by this project, we've actually created sub-prefectural offices of land management that actually are the link between the village and the sub-prefects. So those are the prefects only have the ability, after all the process went through what we actually set up, he's the only one who has the ability to sign the documents. We have done everything so that we can understand and we can list all of the verbal contracts on paper, so between foreigners and indigenous population or others. And so we promote this type of contract so that the foreigners or the national citizens who are not in these regions can actually do what they have to do on the land that belongs to citizens. And that allows to work with the embassies of the countries. We have some good relationship between the indigenous populations and the foreigners. So that's how we organize ourselves. And in terms of gender, in a country where it is a succession or heritage is actually gone through the father, and it's a patriarchal society, it's very difficult to actually talk about gender, but with explanations, with awareness, the people actually understood that, men understood that they have to give land to their wife. In the north, we have 38% in the north, and that's a record. A lot of women now are organizing themselves to be able to have access to the land. So if you have other questions, I will be ready to answer. After this attempt, and I said that it was actually hard for the World Bank to go to a country after the war, but it dared. And now the 6 regions that were test regions, the bank was encouraged, and it actually extended the project to 16 regions. And one of the major consequences that we can say is that young people can be employed thanks to these programs. Today, we have understood that those are not necessarily people who have MBAs, but those are people who are doing work. They can actually go and take a census, and and for this new program, in the 16 regions, we have an average of 200 new recruits of young people who actually basically work for this program. If you multiply it by 16, it's a pool of recruitment for the government. And the land tenure is not only a source of peace, but it is also a gold mine for the young people. I don't know. I have the feeling that I'm being asked to actually stop because I think that there was a little red card. I don't know if I should actually continue or not. And maybe you'll come back to me. Thank you very much.
Director General, merci beaucoup. We can come back to the women's rights in particular in the second round of questions. Deputy Director General Liva Mang. The government of Laos is in the process of systematically registering land rights with the aim to complete land titling in the country by 2030. One of the biggest challenges is that many people are living within areas officially designated as state forest lands. Recently, the National Assembly and government have issued regulations that have clarified land rights of those living within state forest lands. Can you tell us more about what led to this tenure reform and what has the government done so far to recognise land rights in forest areas?
Good morning, everybody. Before I exchange the idea, the successful, how the governments and the National Assembly adoptions of the land recognitions in the forest land, I would like to bring you back 30 years ago. Because Laos is a landlocked country, we don't have sea, but we have is the forest. So the government decided to drive the economics in the electricity, clean energy sector. So that's why our former President Kaison Phouvihan said that to have water, you have to have forest. So that's why the government decided to preserve about 16 million hectares of the territory identified as the forest area. This is the background. So from 1995, under support by the World Bank, to enhancing the land legislation outside the forest land. So far outside the forest land, almost complete 2.1 million. So before COVID-19, the National Assembly adoptions of the new, the amended land law, which identified that we can issue the land titling in forest land. This is the background. So from that, since 2021, under support from the Swiss governments, the MILG2 project, Dr. Meka, the project manager, also here, and the GIZ team, we have piloting 29 villages under forest area. This is the key successful to propose to National Assembly that we can issue the land titling or issue the land certificate in the forest land, that we can still preserve the biodiversity to decrease the deforestation. So if your country would like to get approval for the National Assembly, first you have to conduct the piloting. And in parallel, we also get the financial and also technical support under ProGreen to start the consultation workshop through the country at the local and the central levels. And finally, last year, Minister of Environment, Minister of Agriculture have signed the National Action Plan to 2030, as you mentioned. So from now, about 600,000 plots are located in the forest area with more than 3,000 villages. Why we know? Because we get the land tax from the people who lives in the forest. So I think in your country the same. If you would like to know how many plots in the forest area, you should start at working with Ministry of Finance who get the land tax. That is, and in parallel, in order to implement the National Action Plan, in realities, under support with the many development partner, because in Laos, the same in your country, we have the Laos table meeting every year. At the Laos table meeting, we set up the land subsector working group. Now, Department of Land and Habitats International and also the GSS, we are co-chair. And every quarterly, we conduct the consultation workshop. Why? This platform is very important because if DOL and Department of Forest, we do not move, we do not talk, we do not take action, development partner will ask, why DOL, why DOF, you still sleep? So that's why we have to look at lunch. So that's why it is the key achievement that many technical guidelines are complete. And now we are conducting the final piloting in Kok Swang in the Khamwan province under MRG and the World Bank project, the 3L project. Why this is important? Because if you would like to preserve the forest, you have to ensure that the titling for the construction land and the permanent agriculture land that National Assembly allow you to issue the land titling. And also another objective that implement used by for the another purpose inside the forest land, we will issue only the land certificate with the 50 year. After that will become the state land again. It is very clear. So that's why land allocation planning guideline is the precondition to approve which plot can issue the land titling, can issue the land certificate. That is the background and key success. The incorporation among ministry, both central and local government is very important because in Laos, as I mentioned yesterday, we have the Lao Union and also have Lao Women Union. So their input very big. So they are the key person to communicate with the local people. So then we can get very much cooperation from the local people. This is the key success that I would like to share. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So you've all been responsible for some quite extraordinary efforts to strengthen land tenure. Excuse me. We're going to move on to a second round of questions, shifting gear a little and thinking about inclusion and how you were able to tackle that in your tenure efforts and the results seen. I'm going to kick off again with yourself, Honourable Dear Gracious and Djembe. I'm going to mix the order up a little to keep the panellists on their toes after you. But as part of Tanzania's mass certification process, the government made significant effort to strengthen women's land rights. Can you tell us more about the actions taken to improve women's land rights and the results?
Yes, as mentioned earlier, that the number one step that we took as the government of the United Republic of Tanzania was to look at the Land Act itself, to look at the land policy that we had, the 1995 land policy, which was the first land policy we had as a country. And that 1995 land policy recognized customary law, which in some areas did not allow women to own land. So when we were doing the review of the land reform in Tanzania and the policy in general, we also looked at that. So we did away with the customary laws in the new land reform. So it is not into account as it stands. And not only that, we also looked at the whole Land Act of 1999 to make sure that we do recognize women as rights in land ownership, whereby also spouses can own land together. So certification can have Mr. and Mrs. in one title. You know, so that was an inclusion process as well, done by the government. But also we had to engage with our local governments in Tanzania to sensitize the public and target especially women knowing their rights in owning land in rural areas, but also in urban areas. So we've done a great job, the central government with the local government to sensitize and give out education to what needs to be done in terms of land registration and to include women in that. But not only that, we've also worked together with non-governmental organizations in the sensitizing process to make sure that women are included. And we've seen changes now whereby spouses can also inherit land. Women spouses can inherit land once the other spouse passes away. We've also seen a number of families also owning land. Let's say the wife would own land, have certificates in her own name, not only in the husband's name, and other land also can be jointly shared. So we have made steps towards that. Yes, there's still room for more improvement, and that's where we are also working hard in making sure that we bring more women into ownership. We do have areas, rural areas, where still customary law applies locally in villages and in their tribal customs. So we're trying to also go down there, educate them the importance of having women's rights included in land registration, and we will see steps and we will make progress as a country in Tanzania.
Thank you. That's great to hear. Director General Bamba, coming to you next. You already touched briefly on some of the gender reforms, but we're coming back to you for further. The government of Côte d'Ivoire recently simplified land registration procedures and scaled up land registration efforts with the aim to issue an additional 500,000 land certificates and 250,000 land use contracts, including a focus on addressing women's land rights and land disputes. What strategies are you adopting to integrate dispute resolution and gender dynamics into the land registration process?
Thank you. Who wants to do too much actually doesn't do much, but the World Bank actually worked with us to go from 6 regions to 16 regions. So what we had to do was to actually manage a massive document. We had to sensitize. We had to actually do this in a very short amount of time. We had to reach to go from 60,000 to 500,000. And so we had to really imagine some new solutions and to be very quick. In each village, there are 2 focal points that will go in the census and actually list all of the property owners. So we had a very, very heavy procedure with 35 pages, and we dematerialize everything. And we have a systematic approach. We do not actually go from one little plot to another one, but we actually do this on a large scale. We try to register all of the different lands that are part or that would be part of a contract, of a land contract. And everything is actually gone back to the rural committee that has to decide what it is. And so the first thing that is done, A4 is actually does the first card for the companies, and we have 1 month to actually be part of the life of the population. The committee actually sits and see whether or not the map, if the map that is being drawn is not going to go to another neighboring. So we've centralized this. In the past, it was done manually. We have 27 maps that were done by the operators, but with what we've actually set up, with one click, we can actually see the compliance of the 500 maps in one click. We have a database that we called C4, which is the land use database, which is the base of reference for Côte d'Ivoire in terms of rural lands. And I wanted to And we have a law that is in Côte d'Ivoire nowadays, and that makes C4 the rural land database that will be that will facilitate the land contracts. And we are sure in that case that there will be no contest for any of these contracts. So we have organized an administration that is close to the population so we can have their agreement. And we basically are in the villages, in the different prefectures, to make sure that the documents that as issues are viable. And that allows also foreigners, that allows also the citizens who are not in their region to make sure that they can actually operate on the land peacefully. In terms of women, and I think that it was one of the questions that you asked, there's a ministry in charge of the promotion of women that is very active, but something happened in Côte d'Ivoire. Many women are actually very high in the hierarchy of companies, and the hand that feeds us has the power. And they actually go back in the villages, they go back to their fathers, and they actually reclaim their land. They are the ones very often who work and who actually feed the family, and they are in management, and they go back and they ask for their land. And there was an awareness campaign, and the men understood that when they inherit, whether they're nephews or others, that they have to actually give part of the land to their spouse, so that in case they actually die, the women will be the owner of the land. So there is an awareness campaign so that men understood that it is not letting go of power, but it is actually to guarantee education for their children after they die. So that even in regions where Muslims are in majority, there is 38% of women who are actually landowners. With the World Bank, we've imagined some competitions, and at the time I said, the one who actually does this kind of thing will actually have access. The men who actually marry their wives will have access to land. So actually it was a competition, and the prefectures were actually swamped with marriage certificate. And that's actually, and today, everybody has understood that whether it's in the case of the government and on the side of the roads. The women are the ones who actually sell things. They carry their children on their back. They are very active, and these women must be landowners so that they can actually have fruit trees in the locality so they can feed all of the inhabitants. So promotion of women being landowners are actually supported by the government, in particular with the wife of the president. So that's about women. So today, 30%, whereas in the past we were only 3%. So we can say that there was a good attempt for us to reach this. Thank you.
Thank you. And I always like to hear of women flexing their muscles a little bit, but I've never heard of such a competition for marriage. Mr. Gustavo, turning to you next. In addition to Brazil's agrarian reform, INCRA is responsible for the regularization of quilombola territories and traditional communities. What are the main advances and challenges in the titling of these territories, and how does INCRA act in conjunction with other institutions to ensure the territorial and social rights of the people? Mr. Bamba.
Chers collègues, excusez-moi, c'est pas un concours.
It is not a competition of marriage. To have a document, you have to be legally married. That's why we are bringing people to marry the women so they have a status that would be insurance. If the man were to die, then they have a right for inheritance. So if they're not married, they are not well known, parents, children, and so on and so forth. And brothers usually will be inheriting of everything. So if there is a legal marriage, and you have access to the assets of the husband, then the land of the husband comes to the woman. I just wanted to give you this explanation, additional explanation.
You and the quilombola, please.
Primeiro assim, quilombo.
First of all, I wanted to explain what the word quilombola means. These are communities of Afro-descendant people in Brazil. So in reality, in the legal definition, we have the ILO 169 Convention, which includes other communities, not only original peoples. It includes Quilombola people, as well as other traditional peoples, such as the communities in the Amazon that live off the land, and those are enshrined in the ILO 169 Convention. Original people are defended by or protected by FUNAI, which is the National Foundation for Indigenous Peoples, and we also deal with additional traditional communities included in the ILO's Convention 169. And the specific traditional community we deal with are Quilombola. They are Afro-descendants. There is a minority of those who live in urban areas, but primarily they are in more removed areas and helping them manage their land rights. This is a very lengthy, complex process. It requires anthropological studies and a technical process for demarcating these lands. In the previous administration, that entire process had been frozen. The previous president had said that it was not going to allow those communities to have a single inch of land. And another relevant element to point out is that Brazilian legislation allows public servants to enjoy stability in their jobs. And public servants were the ones who were able to ensure that some of these processes were kept alive, even going against the administration at the time. And so, though they struggled at the time, we were able to have some progress. We were able to, since then, with the new administration, we were able to advance much quicker. The current budget is around $30 million per year for Quilombola community certification of lands, which is not sufficient, but it's a major improvement. And we have also advanced in areas that sometimes their lands are in public land, sometimes in private land. When the land is public, it's easier. However, if their land overlaps with private land, we have to change documentation and apply eminent domain regulation. We have to ensure that we follow what the Constitution says, which is that these communities have the right to their land. So whenever private lands are involved, we have to apply eminent domain rules in order to protect the community's rights. We have made great strides. We have 1,800 current requests for registration ongoing, being reviewed. It is such a huge country, as I've mentioned before, and our agency is active throughout the entire territory, but still we have made excellent progress. And in addition to the 125,000 families, as I mentioned before, that we have managed to include in the National Land Reform Program, 20% of those are Quilombola families. So that is quite relevant data. And in addition to that, other communities, those that depend on Amazon resources, they are also protected by Convention 169, and we have a special category to include them in the legislative protection. And those 125,000 families, 40,000 involved those families that live along the rivers, that depend on extraction of resources in the Amazon. So in all, I believe we have been able to add value to our work at INCRA. And it is also important to keep in mind that Brazil has a legal framework. Our Constitution clearly defines the rights of these communities. And along with the job stability that public servants enjoy, that means that even during administrations that are not favorable to protecting these rights, we can still keep some of these rights alive, but now we have made significant progress in the last 2 years.
Turning now again to Deputy Director General Lee Vameng. You mentioned in our last round of discussions that the government of Laos is finalising the regulations around land rights in state forest lands. These regulations will include different types of tenure instruments that will apply for different land areas and uses. Can you talk a little more about these instruments, as well as how the government plans to implement the new policy while balancing sustainable land management, development and alignment with Laos' national mandate of maintaining 70% forest cover?
As I mentioned in the first session, that as the governments and National Assembly identify 70% the purpose for preserve the forest in order to have water for dam developments, clean energy, and finally the governments recognize the land rights of the people who live in the forest, because they live in the forest before announced at the forest land in 1993. Before 1993, more than 3,000 villages, they live there already. But if we would like to decrease the deforestation, we would like to preserve the biodiversity, and we also would like to develop the clean energy through building the dam. Living together, people and forest, is very crucial. So in the National Assembly resolution, clearly highlight that they have three patterns. The first for the construction land and permanent land. The government Ministry of Environment will issue the land title for them. So the people who get the land title can sell the land that they receive. The second pattern is that for the non-agriculture land, we will keep only the land certificate that they have 50-year time frame. The person who get land certificate, they can transfer for their children, but within the 50 years, after that, that land will become the forest land again. And another pattern is we will make the forest protection and management contract for the non-permanent land and the village. They use as the village forest. So that's like we say the forest contract. And in order to minimize the impacts, now I would like to inform you about the update information that 2 months ago, in March 2025, our National Assembly adoptions of the new Ministry of Agriculture and Environment, which merging Ministry of Environment and Ministry of Agriculture. So it is very easy for us because Department of Land, Department of Forestry, since 2021, we work together, but somehow still a difficulty. But we become new ministry, we have the same parents. So new minister can accelerate, can bring out to work together in the technical guideline in order to finalize the technical guideline. As I mentioned, that the important thing that you have to ensure and clear demarcations of the village boundary first. Otherwise, the village and village will dispute. So first have to clear demarcations of the village. And then you go to survey by using the drone and the ground walking, using the high-tech RTK as the tool to survey the real plot, which plot used for the construction land, for the non-permanent agriculture, for the agricultural land. That is the key success and ensure the issue of those land certificate or land titling or forest contract.
Thank you. And finally, Secretary Vivek Bharadwaj, you shared with us the remarkable story of the Svanvita scheme, extraordinarily large-scale mapping and titling efforts. What have been the impacts of the scheme?
Let me give a little bit of context to this. So, quarter of a century ago, the Peruvian economist Hernando de Soto, he wrote The Mystery of Capital. And he said that $9 trillion worth of assets of the poor are stuck in land, property, houses, businesses, but they're unable to leverage these assets because they don't have title. So monetization of land is extremely important. We have surveyed 68,000 square kilometers, and the land monetized till date is $1.16 trillion. Now, this is a huge figure, but let me break it down at the individual level. So, in the state of Madhya Pradesh, Om Prakash Jat was a dairy farmer. His 362 square meters of land was valued at 2 million rupees. He took a loan of 700,000 from a bank and bought 4 heads of cattle. his income increased by 15,000 rupees a month. He is feeding his children better. His quality of life is better. He's repaying his loans. Another woman in Rajasthan, she took out a loan to educate her daughter abroad. A third, Manohar Mewada, again took a loan and bought a small taxi cab. He gave it to his son, who uses it to ferry students to the nearby school. Now we have here a documentation of such stories. These are real people, real stories, real successes. And if you would like to know more about this, we're holding an event tomorrow at 2:30 in the afternoon, where we will share some of these stories. So welcome, everyone.
Thank you so much. I'm going to draw this panel to a close, but the interventions today have really reinforced for me the importance of land tenure, whether for peace, for water, for social benefit, in particular for women and for young people. These scales of reform require a huge amount of political will. They require partnerships, they require technology and innovation, but they also require dedicated, courageous and professional individuals who take personal responsibility for driving forwards change. I'm sure you all agree with me that this panel represents just such individuals, and I hope you will join me in thanking them so much for their contributions today and more broadly. If you'd like to return to the audience at this point, I'm going to ask Marcy to join us here on stage for the closing session. Marcy Vigoda recently joined, actually when I say recently, last week joined as the director of the International Land Coalition. She brings more than 30 years of experience in international development, humanitarian action, partnerships, external relations, resource mobilization, gender equality, organizational development, and governance, and so is very well positioned to lead our outgoing session. Over to you.
Thank you for the warm welcome, Maggie. This is indeed my third day as the director of the International Land Coalition, and it is such a pleasure to be here with such a distinguished and experienced group of people. This panel has indeed been so inspiring to hear what countries across the globe are doing to secure land rights at scale, using technology, formally recognizing customary land rights, issuing unprecedented numbers of land title certificates, and with an eye to inclusion of women's land rights, traditional communities, dialogue, and the need for practical dispute mechanisms. The last segment this morning, and I know that we are the only thing standing between you and coffee, is entitled A Call to Action, The Next Generation. And we will give the floor to distinguished speakers from 2 countries which have also committed to take action to recognize land rights. As we heard earlier from Ward, and in these challenging times, progress is being made, but it is uneven and it is not at the pace that we would like. On the positive side, an increasing number of countries are planning to take action to advance land rights, and we will hear about that now. I am first going to introduce Ms. Lourdes Gonzalez, Director General of Public Registries within the Supreme Court of Justice in Paraguay. In this role, Lourdes is responsible for registration of all assets in the country. She is a magistrate, a lawyer, and a notary public. Each of our speakers will spend just 3 minutes to give us a taste of these exciting new initiatives and of innovation and progress. So please, Lourdes, you have the floor.
Good morning to you all. I will be speaking in Spanish. Thank you, Marcy. And it is an honor to be here with this audience. In my country, I represent the General Department of Public Registry under the Supreme Court. I've dedicated a very large part of my personal and professional life to the promotion of the modernization and efficiency of land management. In that sense, from the beginning, and that was 27 years ago, I've been leading this institution in my country, and I've been working very hard with a very wonderful group of technicians, very committed to ensure everything that has to do with land titling and facilitate the management of properties. My intervention today, however, has to do with a new law that was enacted in my country in January this year that created a